right, good day, everybody. My name is Omar Davis with CrashBell, and welcome to the Me Time web series. In this series, we're going to be discussing some really important things all about that me time. But one of the major things we wanted to do is point out people in positions like executives or therapists themselves, like what do we do or what do they do, especially the ones that have actually acclimated mindfulness into their everyday routine. For 10 years, I had a medical and sports rehab massage therapy practice. And in my practice, I learned a lot about the human body, for one, but I also recognized how people's stress was the tension that they felt in their muscles. People's emotions was the tension that they felt in their muscles. So I started writing curriculum. I started putting together programs so that we can actually help my corporate clients, who are my patients, to not only fulfill themselves, but also understand how to feel better within their body. But the first thing we really had to tackle was the mind. And the mind is actually influencing the body. So it's very vital that we understand that we do take that me time for ourselves and see what's going on inside the mind. But with that said, I'm going to bring on our next guest, True Pettigrew.
Omar, what's going on, bro? How you doing, man?
Oh, brother, everything is well. How about yourself?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, man. And I'll make
Bless,
this
brother.
introduction brief because I'm excited to just get into the conversation and start chopping up with you, man. Love the work that
Yeah,
you're
brother.
doing. Love what you represent. True Pettigrew, I am the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the Minnesota Timberwolves and Minnesota Lynx of the NBA and the WNBA. And my focus is on making sure that we provide the most inclusive and equitable environment possible for the members of our organization internally, and that we create the most equitable environment for people to thrive externally in the community that we serve. And so those are my two areas of focus. And obviously a lot comes with that, but real big picture, that's essentially
Yeah.
what the role is.
Oh, man. And we all know, especially right now with D&I, it is a lot that comes with that. You know, it's not just a position, it's a lifestyle, but it's also a reality because most people that are taken into the D&I position are people of color. So we have to put on the corporate suit, but then we got to put on the black hat, and then we got to put on the, I'm still professional hat, and then we got to put on the I'm trying to look out for everybody hat, while the
Oh
system
man.
itself isn't necessarily giving us that like the means to do that, right? And so that's actually one of the things that is really, really important for me because, I do speak with a lot of people in your position, and
Mhm.
we try to do our best to really bring forth wellness, mindfulness, and even just opportunity for their team to feel better. And so, like, for you personally, and also maybe even with your team, like, tell us a little bit about that role and what that role is for you, like daily, on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, man, it's really about a willingness to embrace and facilitate
Mhm.
what I would call courageous conversations. Because when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's typically conversations that make people uncomfortable. People are uncomfortable talking about race. People are uncomfortable talking about sexual orientation. People are
Yeah.
uncomfortable talking about gender roles and gender differences. These are a lot of areas that make people uncomfortable. And so a lot of my day to day is really helping people understand how to embrace those courageous conversations by facilitating those courageous conversations and helping everyone to recognize that we're all on the same team. And
Mm-hmm.
because I think a lot of the division, Omar, comes from people wanting to prove that they're right and someone else is wrong, right? And it's not always about a right or wrong. It is about, okay, how can we co-create and collaborate on solutions that fosters the most inclusive environment for us all to thrive, right? I don't need it. I'm not listening to hear your perspective on something in an effort to prove that your perspective is wrong and mine is right. I should be listening to understand how you feel
Mm.
and why you feel the way that you do.
True. I'll be honest, man. I wish and I hope that even by us being in a position to have conversations with other men, other execs, other people in your positions at different companies, that they can adapt that mindset that you just stated. And it's not even really a mindset than it is just a heartfelt. Like you
Bro,
genuinely
it's a heart
are
condition.
coming
It
from
really is.
yeah, it's coming from a place where again, because me being an anatomy person, right? I like to break the body down. So the mind is a computer that has, well, the whole body is a computer or a machine, but the mind specifically is built on programming. And so again, just
Mm,
like what you said, dog, like what if I spent all my time trying to defend something only to try to reprogram somebody else's defense? Like
right.
that's for one, never going to go anywhere. And that's why we
But
have a
think
lot of the
about
stuff
what you
that we
just
have.
said. Think about that. That's what a lot of us do. What you just said.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I've learned in my lessons of being a super aggressive and sometimes abrasive person in my past that that never got me anywhere. It only tarnished my relationships. And then it also sometimes made me look like a fool leaving the conversation because I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. I'm trying to prove a point that's void. And at the end of the day, it only caused separation between me and somebody that I actually cared about
Mm,
or somebody I may not have cared about. And so for
hmm.
me, it hit me. I was like, yo, I cannot waste any more time trying to argue with someone, their belief system.
Right.
So my focus now, I started switching to the heart, right? I started switching to that focus of empathy. Like, yo, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if you necessarily are giving me that same empathy if you hear what I'm saying. And so we never can come to a means of understanding because, like you said, it's always an argument of who's right. And I'm not trying to be right at this point. I'm trying to help
Mm-mm.
our community to thrive. And me being right doesn't I don't care. Like I can be super right, but I don't need to be right. And so,
Yeah.
but that's also some of the that's a part of the work of not only building your self-confidence, learning how to build a community, and also just letting the ego go, you know? That
Yeah.
ego is a really big one. And again, even by you saying that in this particular moment right now, it makes me feel this much hope from this much hope because that
Right.
also means
Right.
that people like yourself and people like me are in positions to not only help influence and have affluence, but we are actually some people who are doing it and we're looking to lead by example, not just to talk. Because
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now everybody's talking so much and it's like, well, you're talking it, but what are you doing? Who are you helping?
Yeah. Are you
When are
living
you
out
in the
those values? Right. Are you living the values?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. But you know what? Let's we can talk all day about that one question. So let's go ahead and move it to some realities right now. We're in
Hmm.
this new norm. Normally, if this was pre-COVID, me and you would be in the same space having this interview. Um, so right now, everything is up in arms. COVID has changed us. COVID has showed us a lot. It not only has made the world stop, it removed everyone's comforts, it removed everyone's distractions. But the one
Hmm.
thing that I saw that it showed everybody how much their mental health has been compromised this entire time.
Yeah.
And suddenly people are like, uh, I don't know if you guys recognize, but I'm going crazy because all my comforts and distractions are gone. And I'm like, word.
Hmm.
And we all went through it. I went through it. I went crazy. I lost a whole business during COVID. And
Right.
thankfully I had two of them, but I lost a whole business. So that first month, of trying to understand that, man,
Right.
I ain't gonna front. I was not a good person. You'd be like, you ain't in the wellness. You are not in the wellness. And I'd be like, right now I'm not.
He
But I
said,
was
"Not
also
right now."
freaking out like the rest of the world, right? I was unsure. I was scared. I was afraid. I had no idea how I was gonna support my family. I had no
Hmm.
idea how I was gonna support my staff or myself. So I literally lost it. So I'm curious to know throughout this whole impact, how has COVID, or I guess, what did it look like for you through work and family? And whichever one you want to start with first, by all means.
Yeah. Now, thank you for that question, Omar, and a phenomenal observation and insight that you just shared about the mental health impact that I won't even say occurred, that was revealed, right? I use the light and dark contrast or comparison is that,
Yeah.
when we talk about light, the definition of light is that it's a natural agent that reveals
Mm.
things. And so it simply revealed what was already there. If you turn off all the lights in your house in a room, right, it's in the dark. When you turn the light on, there's not going to be anything new in that room. The light simply reveals what's already there. And I think that's what COVID did. It was a revelation of a lot
Yeah.
of the mental and emotional health concerns and issues that already existed in many of us, right? But you, like you said, we had those distractions that
Yeah.
were, drawing our attention so that we didn't have to really face and address those issues. And for
Yeah.
me, oh my man, I'll say I was fortunate, right? I was really blessed in this regard because similar to you, I knew I had to do some work and I had already started
Mm.
the work prior
Yeah, man.
to the pandemic kicking in. So I kind of had an understanding of what I call, and not just what I call, like psychologists and sociologists have identified kind of the 7 life dimensions that we all share,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And you know what they are. We all have our mental needs and wants. We all have our
Yep.
physical needs and wants, family, right? Spiritual, kind of social community,
Yep.
financial material, and faith based, spiritual, right?
Yeah.
And so I had taken the time to understand what I wanted from each of those life dimensions, and then which of
Nice.
those were the most important. I had already prioritized them, right? And so I was already in a place where I was seeking and achieving kind of a spiritual fulfillment and balance. Like that's my
Yeah.
priority.
Yeah.
So when I wake up in the morning, that's the first thing that I do. But because
Mhm.
I fulfilled that need, that was a real need for me and how I'm wired and designed, that
Mm.
made me a better husband. It made me a better father. It made me a better community leader. It made me a better business person, right? And so I was fortunate in that regard that I had done the work
Yeah.
prior to the pandemic. So, man, I really started leading during the pandemic because so many people that I was talking to were experiencing some of the things that you're talking about. Me and my son, who was 7 years old at the time, we started a morning prayer or Facebook Live morning prayer, right? That I would
It's
just go on
beautiful.
Facebook Live and I would just uh, find a scripture and then I would just
Yeah.
deliver a message based on that scripture and then I would pray for
Yeah.
whoever showed up. And
Yeah.
that filled me up. It was an example for my son and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really helped provide a level of necessary healing for so many other people, man. And so uh, that's what worked for me.
Yeah. Man, those principles, for one, are finite. They're like immutable laws of the human experience. If you guys didn't hear that, we're gonna let you go ahead and watch that one again, because if you do not have those 7 concepts in check, and you know what? It can be less, it can be 4, it can be 7, it can be 12. Because you can break life down into many categories. But what he
Hmm.
just gave you, and I just want all y'all out there who's watching to look at each and every one of those points of your life and see how it's not in a place where you would like it to be. Funny enough, you said that, True. I was watching, there's this thing called the Life Book. And in
Hmm.
the Life Book, it's pretty much like a program that helps you to understand those bases of your life. But the thing is, you have to look. Like you have to look and be like, career, satisfied? Huh. Faith, satisfied? Huh. Family, parenting, all these things that have to do with life. And
Yep.
just in the basic 4 principal needs, whenever it comes to how the emotions work, if you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, halt is what we like in mental health. We call it halt.
Hmm.
If you are any of those things, then at any point your mental health is compromised. But in those 4 things literally encompass everything that you just said about your life and about your experience. And I'm so happy to hear that you took advantage of that before the corona happened,
Right.
and
Right.
it allowed you to even have a sense of ease through the process. And I'll completely second that. That first month of the quarantine and that, I was not okay in my emotions and in my mind because I was reacting to everything,
Mm-hmm.
something new, something afraid. My kid can die. My mom can die. My wife can die. Anybody can die. Everybody can die. And
Right.
so
Yep. Yep.
that immediate trigger puts us on a already super defensive and triggered black man in America. And so
Mm-hmm.
I actually it took me a little bit under a month to self-regulate. And it allowed me to make a decision because I had to go into some deep meditation. I had to take a fine look at Omar. Like,
Right.
why are you feeling this way, oh? And a lot of times it's like, oh, you've always felt this way. You just used to go hang out with your boys whenever you felt this way, so you wouldn't
Right.
feel it.
Right.
Or you always felt this way, or it'd be easier for you to go to a bar and be gratified by the people in the environment because they know you and they make you feel good, that community aspect, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yep.
I'll go get that in order to fill the void of the truth that I'm feeling. And I won't give myself enough time. But COVID, I had plenty of time, plenty of time. And so I took that moment, and it's interesting because I still was teaching schools and kids. I was teaching adults, and I was also leading a whole group of meditation students, which was 40 plus people, 3, 4 times a week. So I was like, yo, how am I showing up to these spaces all crazy?
Right.
But I had to choose peace.
Mm.
Like I had to choose it. And I had to make an
That's good.
active decision daily. Like, yo, oh, do you want to have an argument and fight that battle that's not really real? You're only making it up in your mind because your ego wants to be right once again. And I
Man.
was like, nah, I want peace. I want peace.
Yeah. Oh, I've
So
been married.
I settled back.
It'll be
Go
20
ahead.
years it'll be 20 years this year. And what you just said, it took me back to year one, right? And I'm so grateful and thankful, man. An amazing, beautiful wife, Tamika.
Yeah.
But I think about year one, two people coming together, trying to figure it out, both, driven in our own right. And year one was tough. Oh, like we could be can we be transparent on this segment? Is that you
Please.
accept that? You accept
Please.
transparency?
Yeah. Yeah. All by all means.
It
We already know.
it it was tough, bro. And I remember talking to one of my friends about what I was dealing with, right? And I'm like, man, bro, like I say this, and she say that, I do this, and she do that, and I'm just going on, right? I'm complaining, I'm venting, and he's listening. OG, right?
Yeah. 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 Always.
OG's listening, and he's saying nothing. He let me vent, and he's like, you know what, True? If everything you're telling me is accurate, and I'm sure it is, no reason to lie. He said, then you're right. She should do this. She should do that. You're 100% right. He said, but my question to you is, do you want to be right or do you want to be married? You have to make that decision. And here it is 20 years later. So you know what decision I made.
The right one.
But
Yo, true. I
we
didn't learn
put
that
too
until year
much
6.
we put too much emphasis on being right, man, instead of
Yeah.
seeking the peace, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And that's a
focusing
real
on
one.
what's best for the greater good, the collective good. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And you were better than I was, and maybe it's because whenever I don't know, I wasn't in the space, but it took like me 6 years of a relationship to the woman I'm with to learn that one. So I used to argue every day, and that was my lesson, right? I had to learn by causing contention every day of my life in order to, because I was trying to prove myself right. I was trying to get her to
Mhm.
understand me. I was trying to get her to see what I was seeing.
Yep.
And I'm like, but why? And it took me really that long. And so you saved yourself so much time and so much energy. And but you're right, it is a choice and you have to choose it. It's not about being right. It's not about being, it's not about the ego. Anytime the ego, that for me, anytime I saw my ego was trying to defend or, posture up, I was like, yo, Omar, check yourself though.
Hmm.
Like check you, like feel your breath, bro. You breathing hard, you looking like this. Your nostrils are suddenly flaring, your heart's beating, you squeezing the heck out of your pencil now. Like, yo,
Right.
like you're not in danger. She's your spouse. You're having a conversation.
Right.
Like,
Y'all
why are
in this
you
thing. Yeah. Y'all teammates. Right. Y'all on the same team.
same team, homie? Same team. But with that said, once again, that's another one we can go on all day with because whenever it comes to family and and relationships, that's just a really long, drawn out topic because there's so much beef there, so much meat. But let's move on to the concept of self-care. We've talked about it, right? We've talked about self-care. We've talked about, how we've been able to understand it. But I'm curious to know, like, for you, what does self-care look like? Like, my self-care may look different from your self-care. And there's many different types of or ways that we can. So I'm curious, what does it look like for you specifically?
But it's a couple of things. For me, it's meditation. Right? It is prayer. It's studying, reading scripture. It's going for a walk or going for a run. Right. And so it's doing my best to feed all of those components that I view the makeup of this being as mind, body, and spirit. And I have to feed all of them, give them all a sense of fulfillment. But I do it, and it sounds selfish on the surface. I have to think about what is most important to me from a mental aspect, right? And that's where I read and I watch TED Talk, like, and it's different for everybody, right? People be like, you watch TED Talks, right? No, but for me, right, that's fulfilling for me. That is calming for me because I'm learning at my own pace, right? I read scripture, I meditate, I pray, right? I'll go for a walk or I'll go for a run. So now I'm getting into the physical, right? So it's feeding my mind, it's taking care of my body, feeding my body, and then feeding my spirit. And I do that because I've learned that if I'm not whole, I can't be the best servant I need to be for those who I've been giving stewardship over.
Man, you said it. And again, all of y'all out there, these are some tips. For one, TED Talks is a plethora of information. You can find anything on anything. It's 9 times out of 10 going to be not only informative, but inspiring. So I respect that. And you know what? Sometimes busting out of TED Talks is what you need versus putting on that Netflix that makes you feel a certain way, right? And so that's actually really powerful. But there was something you said at the very beginning that I wanted to highlight, because I find that most people get these two things mixed up, or they think one is more important than the other. Meditation and prayer. Those two things are not the same.
No, they're different.
And people think that, like, whenever I would try to explain like the difference between meditation and prayer, where I'm like, well, meditation is focus. You can focus on anything. You're actually focused on something all day. So the things that you focus on the most, whether it's terrible thoughts, hurting other people, fulfilling your goals, it is a type of meditation because you take time to focus on it. Like, let's just say if you took time to focus on your breath. Let's say if you took time to focus on your thoughts. Let's say if you took time to focus on your intestines. You can focus on anything. There are other types of bodies. But meditation and prayer are different, because prayer is, like you said, it's almost like a stewardship. It's like you're sending positive messages of empathy and care for someone or something.
That's it.
And what's really crazy, and let's just get a little deep here, because a lot of people in our community do have this concept of meditation and prayer. Or a lot of people in my Southern family, they think meditation is like something that's negative because of their association with, like, it's Buddhist. And I'm like, no, it's
right, exactly.
Literally only focus. Like, get that thing out of your head. It's only focus. That's it. And so it's important for us to recognize that also prayer is not begging. Like, we need to recognize that if you're praying from a place of want, lack, need, or and like I'm not fulfilled, that's not how that works, y'all. Like, prayer is a heartfelt expression that moves outward. So the fact that you got up every morning and put out that heartfelt expression and then aligned it with some scripture so that people can have a basis, that was prayer. Yeah, that's a big difference than, God, if you don't help me get a man that I need, and I got to pay this rent, God. Like, ooh, if you don't help me pay this rent, I don't know what I'm going to do to these kids. It's like, that's a threat. That's not a prayer. That's a threat.
That's a threat.
You're threatening everybody in the universe right now. But it's really important, because those two things, I find that if you don't have that foundation of meditation and prayer, or the concept together, they are the spirituality of yourself. or your concept of faith, then everything else kind of falls aloof, to be honest. Like, I've tried to build up only my career. I've tried to build up only myself. I've tried to be
Bro.
only the best parent. But if I didn't combine the whole aspect of my being into oneness, of I do need to have a relationship with something that is grander or more, how do I put it? More brilliant than my mind is.
Yeah,
Like,
it's just
something
bigger than
created
you.
all
It's
this.
bigger than you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
way bigger. And so giving that idea and that concept some thought, and then aligning yourself with that concept, I learned that that is actually my truth. Like, I'm actually on the behind the scenes, behind the camera, behind all this public stuff. I'm more of a spiritual person than I am actually a mental health person. Like, I cherish, and I have a very sacred relationship with God, and it is daily, and it is moment to moment. So
Yep. Yep.
for me, I had to understand that, and also understand that that also may not be everybody's business, like, because
No, no,
there was a lot of part
absolutely right.
where, yeah, and I felt pressured sometimes. It was like, oh, you're doing all this stuff, but it's like, I had to rein it back for me, and but we're gonna move on, because I know we can, once again, anything we talk about, true, apparently we can talk
Bro,
all day on.
we can go,
But
man. Yeah, we could go all
yeah,
day on any of those
yeah,
topics already.
exactly. But let's keep it real for everyone, and let's just give them some reality, because at the end of the day, people are also trying to understand this concept of balance, right? Because that's what we used before. How do you do the work-life balance? Balance, balance, balance. It ain't no balance no more. There's no balancing. It's integration. And so we've changed, we've cut out balance, and we've said, well, there is no such thing as balance now. So how is work and life integration working for you, and what steps are you taking?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I really hope people pay attention to this part of the conversation, because I think it's so important. Because much like yourself, I was constantly seeking a work-life balance, right? And when I began to start working on myself, and I had the same revelation that that is virtually impossible, because work, career, we talked about the dimensions earlier, right? I referenced 7 dimensions, and you referenced that we all have these multifaceted dimensions of our lives, and work is one. That's one dimension. And so when we talk about work life, think about it: work and then life, all the other dimensions. And we're trying to balance the scale of work with the rest of our lives. That is unfair to every single aspect and dimension, and everyone that is a part of the rest of your life, your family, your community, and
Mm,
all the other your children, right? All the other aspects of your life, your physical well-being, your mental well-being, your
yeah.
emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being. So for me, I've learned that being purpose-led and purpose-driven, right, is really at the core of what creates that seamless integration for all the other dimensions of
Mm,
my life, right? And so it no longer becomes this sense of balance. It becomes this seamlessly integrated circuit where they all feed
mm,
each other. So as I seek to fulfill my spiritual needs, right now, and I mentioned to you before, oh wow, now I'm a better husband, I'm a better father,
yeah.
community leader, business leader, right?
Mm,
And I'm prioritizing taking care of my physical health. I prioritize feeding my mind, right? I prioritize, and then the financial and material piece, that, real talk, that just happens organically. Why? Because I'm adding value. I'm adding
yeah.
tremendous value into the lives of others. And that
Yeah.
value, people are willing to compensate me for the value that I bring into their lives in that career track. Right. And so
Yeah.
to me, I've learned that if I stay focused on my purpose, why I exist,
Mm,
why I am here,
yeah.
and do
Yes.
that, right,
Yeah.
then everything else falls into place. And so I had to do the work to discover my purpose. And my purpose is I exist to serve others by building bridges. That's why I'm
There
here,
it
Omar.
is.
That is why I'm on this earth. And I do
Yo,
that
me
in
and
every aspect of my life.
yo, we are one of the same cloth, my brother. I literally was having a conversation with one of my brothers, and he's like, "Yo, what are you doing today?" I'm like, "I'm only here to serve, bro. Like, I'm just asking my spirit, where do I need to be? Who do I need to speak to? How do I need to assist?" And yeah, it is that bridge, right? It is that ability to step aside from myself and my own, like, um, I don't want to say selfishness, because we have a really messed up understanding of the concept of selfish. Like, you have to put your oxygen
But
mask on
can I
first.
just reiterate that for one moment?
Please
Now,
do.
because
Please do.
it is as servants, right? And I'm so glad, oh man, we could talk forever, right? As servants, on the surface, it seems selfish. And I tell people all the
Yeah.
time, understand what your wants are in all these different life dimensions so that you can prioritize those wants. And
Yeah.
once you understand what your wants are and you pursue those and you are fulfilled, you are the best version of yourself you can be.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are in the best position to be the best servant you can be. So it's not doing it for selfish gain, it's doing it so I can be the best servant that I can be. Because if I'm not fulfilled,
Yeah.
if my cup isn't full, if I am walking around constantly living in trauma and anxiety, I am going to be a horrible servant to others.
Hurt people hurt people.
There it is.
That's it. You know, it's interesting you said that, True. It was like a point in my
Excuse me.
life. I was about, it's all good, brother. I was 30, getting ready to turn 35. And I was just at a point where I needed to, like, really be about Omar. You know, I was doing all this, like you said, that surface stuff to look a certain way, to have a certain title, but I really needed to be about Omar. And I was in this really long meditation one day, and I just heard in my spirit, selfishness is needed in order to understand selflessness.
Mm,
And I was like, wait, what? And then it hit me. You have to take care of yourself and be the best version of you and lead in this concept of empathy, in this concept of self-care. Because when you care for yourself, your concept of how you treat people is different. It just changes
yeah.
everything. Like,
Yep.
me having compassion and empathy for Omar in my experience and my own trauma, it changed the way I saw myself. It changed the
Mm-hmm.
relationship. But it then also meant that, like you said, I had to become purposeful. I had to align, like, what is your purpose? Like, and don't get me wrong, we can have many purposes, but at the end of the day, you still need to see what the purpose is and the vision that you have for yourself. And once that vision is clear, you then start to fulfill those aspects of your life, because they just suddenly
Mm-hmm.
start being filled into the gaps. And again, like you said, the money part, the ideas of financial material stuff, it just shows up when you're living in purpose and when you're living in
It
this
does. And
alignment.
I don't know if people fully understand it. I think we can sit here and say that, but I can't emphasize this enough. That is so spot on. Like, because
Yeah, man.
I think it sounds hard to believe, but it's so
Yeah, it
real.
does. Yeah, it is. And you know what? I'm gonna tell them. I'm gonna explain it real quick, and maybe you can get some out of this too, True. So, me being a person of the anatomy, I went real hard, True. I pretty much, like, took the information and just I started Cookie Monster and it's eating everything. I want it all. Oh, something fell out. Put it back in. Let's go. But it hit me one day as I was studying the anatomy. My teacher told me something in class that changed my life. And then after that, I started to get so much more information. She told me, you can learn anything. And I'm like, that's not true. And she's like, no, it is. We're going to study it today. Your brain's plastic. It's a thing called plasticity. And through plasticity, you can rewrite neurological transactions within your mind, and you can reprogram habits, ideas. You can reprogram who you are completely. But you
Mm,
have to literally go through the habit of actually doing it. And it takes 14 to 21 days to consistently reprogram yourself every day. And no lie, I just started cursing. I was mad. I was like, that's some BS. That's crazy. And she's like, what are you so mad about? I was like, they didn't tell us that.
mm,
They didn't tell us that. So
mm,
everybody that I know, everybody that looks like me, and anybody in this room, I can say something that they told us, don't ever try to be that. Don't ever try to do that, because you ain't that. And for some
mm.
reason, I believe that.
Right.
And if you ask anybody, person of color in this room, we've all been told that at some point of our lives. And I got mad, and it fueled me. And that was actually the moment that I started CrashBell. In my mind, I was like, I got to tell people.
Right.
This is some BS. Y'all know this in science?
Right. Right.
I was mad. So it fueled me though. That anger turned into passion. But this is what I learned. So the heart has its own brain. It's called the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. It is literally the first thing that develops in utero. You don't even have a body yet. You don't even have an actual heart organ yet. You just have this tiny little brain that's beating. And in utero, whenever you're looking at the little, the ultrasound, they're like, "Oh, there's your baby," and everybody's like, "I don't see no baby." They're like, "Look at
Right.
the little
Right.
heartbeat. That's your baby." It's like, "Oh, okay," but if we can understand the actual sacredness of that little tiny heartbeat and how you're not anybody except your heart, and then you grow from your heart, and then we go back to scripture and we see like the kingdom of heaven is through the heart of a child, the sacred space of
Yep.
the heart. So happens to be, it's called the heart brain now, or the intrinsic cardiac nervous system.
Bro,
And what
above
we know
all
about this,
things, guard your bro. You speaking to me now. Above all
just
things,
wait. I'm telling you, just wait.
guard your
Let me
heart.
show you how this is connected. Let me just show you how this is connected. So what happens is we've been programmed in our mind to have specific ideas come, like we was talking about before we even came on this broadcast. They just come. We don't even like, why did that just come in my mind? We've been programmed, but through those programmings, it actually creates chemicals, and our chemicals are feelings. And feelings are like quantum mechanics because they're not simple. They're not just like a chemical. They're actually vibrational too. So it's like whenever you go into a room and you're like, yo, I ain't feeling it in there. Or you walk into a space and you're like, I'm feeling this. Like, that's not, it's a chemical, but it's also a feeling. It's a vibration. It's like quantum mechanics almost. So when you take thoughts, which are electrical, and you take emotions, which are chemicals, they equal feelings. And so from the feeling, that chemical is now running through your body, right? But your heart is the one pumping it. And this is where the trick bag comes in. The chemicals code the heart, and the heart is actually releasing a magnetic field around your body. We know this in science. The Heart Math Institute in Berkeley, California were the ones to find out in 2008. They can measure that we actually have a magnetic field around our body that comes specifically from our heart brain and from the magnetic from our heart. And so whenever you look at it as a whole system, the thoughts influence the emotions influence the heart. The heart is now programmed with this magnetic field. And then we get into the concept of a law of attraction, right? You have a magnet around your body, so we can now understand the law of attraction. And so what it comes down to is understanding the full circle of this entire specific concept. We must then realize that it's not necessarily the mind that is needing the reprogramming, but it's us living in our heart.
The heart. Bro, that's so
Because it is a
deep,
brain.
man. That's so deep.
It
Well,
is
one
real
of the
deep.
things that I knew from a cognitive standpoint. Now, this is so insightful and relevant, and this will be helpful for me in my own teachings. Right now, so
Blessed.
thank you for that. Is one of the things that I know, and I know you know this as well from a cognitive standpoint, is the part of the brain that intakes information and data. It
Yep.
has that's its only function. Its only capacity is to be that storage unit. It does
Yeah.
nothing else
Nothing
but
else.
take it in. It's like, all right, it's here, true. It's here, oh, and my job is done. I have the information. I have the reservoir of knowledge. But it's
Yeah.
doesn't that part of the brain does not compel you to take an action. It does not influence your behavior. The part of the brain that controls our actions and our behaviors and compels us to actually do something, for me to pick up the phone and
Mhm.
call you, for me to give my wife flowers, for me to have a courageous conversation with a colleague, is the part of the brain that controls emotion. And so
The
that is
amygdala.
why it is so important, right? That it's so important that we understand how our words, choices, and behaviors make other people feel, because their actions and behaviors are going to be based on how they feel. It's so funny when I hear people say, well, it doesn't matter how you feel. Here are the facts. No, it 100% matters how you feel.
Yeah. Because facts change too. Facts
But
change,
that's
and
not
that's
going to
really what it comes down to.
control. That's not going to control your behavior. It's what the
No,
heart brain that you just taught me can now draw from that information, and then
exactly.
it will compel you to behave or act a certain way. So as
Yeah,
leaders, right? And
yeah.
definition of leadership is, leadership is, the actions that we take to influence other people's behavior, right? And
Mm,
so if it's going to influence other people's behavior, right, then we need to understand that it matters how we make them feel.
big time. Because it
Right.
matters how we feel.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things that I've recognized as especially as being a parent and learning how to grow up at the same pace as my children did because I had a kid. My first kid I had when I was really young and I was still a boy. So I had to literally learn how to be a man while trying to raise a boy. I was a boy trying to raise a boy.
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that one capacity, it hit me. I was like, yo, you got to really understand that your feelings matter, but so do everybody else's.
But you talked
Like,
about empathy a
everybody,
couple of times, and I commend you for that. I think that's
yeah,
something that gets lost very often, is that understanding that that is
yeah,
the connector that will help us be the best supporters and colleagues and allies and advocates for one another, is
yeah.
exercising those levels of empathy.
Yeah, you're right. And just to go back to the science, whenever you practice empathy, you're still activating portions of the hypothalamus or the amygdala, which is emotions, because it is an emotion. But the amount of chemicals that are released or the type of chemicals are released, completely different. More serotonin, more dopamine, more oxytocin, not so much
Hmm.
cortisol, not so much norepinephrine and adrenaline. And so when you lead with empathy, you actually build up neurological processes in the right side of your brain because empathy is a muscle just like your biceps are. So if you're trying to get big biceps, you got to do this. If you're trying
Yep.
to be empathetic, then you have to try to feel what it may be like to be in somebody else's shoes. And so with that said, I want to jump into this because we only got a couple more minutes left, but I wanted to get these last two questions out because I think that these last two questions are really important, not only for people to recognize self-care and what they should be doing for themselves, but also how they can also be a support system, whether it's in your company, your family, your community, whatever. And so those questions are: what advice would you give to your younger self? Let's go ahead and get that one out the way because I know that can be a real powerful one.
The advice that I would give to my younger self is trust your gifts,
Whew.
right? We've all been given different gifts and very unique gifts.
Yeah,
The gifts work. They
beautiful.
work. Don't let the rest of the world discourage you. And you touched on this earlier in telling you what you can't do. You can't do this, or you shouldn't do that. You have the gifts that you've been given for a reason, and that will contribute to you discovering your purpose and living on purpose.
Mm.
I call it GPS, right? That guides
Yeah,
us to where we go. It's your gifts, your passions, and your service, right? It's
boom.
GPS to purpose. And so, but it starts with recognizing your gifts and then trusting
Facts.
your gifts and
Yeah,
understanding how your gifts can impact other people. And I don't know that early, my younger self, I didn't always trust my gifts. I believed I was good at this, but there
yeah,
was this hesitancy to put myself out there because
yeah.
we of fear of failure and rejection, quite honestly.
100%. 100%. I'm gonna take that GPS. That's great, and I'm gonna actually use that for my students because I think my young kids that we teach with, they can really hear that and understand it because GPS is something they can relate to.
Hmm.
There's sometimes I speak in terms they're like, "Yo, Mr. Davis, we don't know what you're talking about." Bro.
Right,
And I'm
right.
like, let me break it down for you then. Let me just make it real easy. But that is a good one. So you said the what was the G?
The G is your gifts,
Gifts, passion, and
passion,
service.
and service. Find that intersection
Beautiful.
point between your gifts and your passions, and then that is where you have
Mm,
been called to serve.
that's beautiful. That's real beautiful. Now, for all of the corporate folks out there who are
Hmm.
listening, what advice would you give your employees who are feeling burnt out, which pretty much is everybody right now?
Yeah. Man, I would share with them what you have been sharing and teaching this whole time is the importance
Mm,
of self care, right?
yeah,
Taking the time out to take care of yourself mentally,
yeah,
physically, and spiritually, right? Give yourself that time to refuel and rejuvenate because you will be no good to no one if you don't. So really
100%.
take the time to give yourself that and you know, right, me time, right? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
find
yeah,
that me time for yourself in an effort. And
beautiful.
it's not an indication of weakness. It's not an indication
Mm-mm.
that you're not strong enough. It's not an indication that you can't handle it. But what it will result in is trauma. It results in trauma, and then it becomes this untreated and unresolved trauma that will eventually
Yeah.
manifest itself in self-destructive ways.
Oh man, you said it. That's actually, man, thank you for that. No, for one, I just want to thank you for that because as someone who is not only a leader, but someone who I'll reflect back, who's in your position, who has the influence you have, we literally need more men like you in this world. And I know now that there are more men like you in this world, including myself. And now that we are all coming in alignment with ourselves, we're starting to meet.
Yeah,
Once again,
yeah,
going back to that magnet, going back to that vibration and that feeling. I have decided that I only want people in my life that either I'm inspired by or who I can inspire.
yeah,
And the moment I made that declaration to myself, all the people that were BS in my life, suddenly they just didn't even want to talk to the brother. I would annoy
right.
them because they're like, why you all different? Why you acting like you better than us? I'm like, I'm not acting like I'm better than you. I'm just happy, homie. I'm just finally not mad at myself for everything, right?
Right.
And that really showed me that this is the way to go. We have to be about that self-care, about that mindfulness, and really the aspect you just touched on, I think, is really real because a lot of people do have guilt and shame around this concept where they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to make themselves look as if, because let's just be real, corporate culture has convinced us that if we do come up, and this is actually something I see a lot in our surveys, we can't have the space to talk about our mental health because we feel afraid to talk about it with our colleagues because we don't want to be looked at as the weak person on the totem
Yep.
pole or the person who's going to bring the team down or get fired.
Yep.
Like literally
Oh,
these specific words, people are like afraid to talk
yeah.
about how much stress they have and how much they're overwhelmed. And this is literally the whole point of the Me Time series and the Me Time campaign. Because for one, for us as people on both sides, as a company and as a leader in this industry, we are specifically saying to other companies, you got to start literally taking care of your people. Now we're
Yeah.
seeing this great employee escape, everybody, the exodus, everybody's
Yeah.
leaving
Yep.
corporate America, or not even
Yep.
corporate America, all workforces. And the reason that they're doing that is because they value themselves now more because they've been able to sit quietly. They have recognized that I would rather find something else to do than deal with this every day. Like, come on, I'm dealing with the whole world right now. And on top of that, I can't even be happy in my workspace. And then even at some points afford to pay for my family's safety and security and comfort.
Yep.
I'm like looking at these companies now with a whole new viewpoint because for us, for the to actually support company culture, our goal is to help companies see that you need to prioritize your employees because that's going to help you with productivity. If you have employees that have a mental and emotional stability, period.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we're telling the employees that, yo, now you got to talk, you got to speak up, you got to actually like think about yourself and you got to
Mm-hmm.
put yourself first. And
Yep.
then, when I explained this to one of our major clients that we just finished a session with, BBDO, we
Mm-hmm.
were literally telling these guys, I'm like, hey, we went through a whole year of programming with you all. Now you have to practice. Now you have to do it. Like you have all the tools, you got little toolkits, you got videos and understandings, but it's up to everybody to take it on apart. Well, you got to do the work,
You
and
gotta
you
do the
had to
work,
do the
man.
work personally. I had to do the work personally, and so the Me Time campaign and platform is specifically just to give people, I mean, a little nudge, like you can do the work and we got your back.
Right.
Is it going to be easy? No.
Nope.
Wellness and mental health and healing trauma, FYI, for everybody out there, it is not yoga pants and positive affirmations and smiling. It's not what it is. It's been made to look that way so that you can buy the stuff, right? But mental health and healing is actually ugly, traumatic, and sometimes scary. But
Yeah.
we need the systems in place, especially for people of color, to have the opportunity to at least address our own mental health. And that's another
Yeah.
reason why we got all this going, because the point is that people of color specifically have no options. So we're going to give them some
Yeah.
options. And with that said, last but not least, we want everybody to know where they can find you. We want everybody to know how they can see you, how they can get to know who True is more. So where can they stay connected with you? Social media, website, anything you want to give out?
No, absolutely. So, if for those that may be on LinkedIn, it's under True Pettigrew. That's TRU. Pettigrew is Pettigrew. If it's on IG, on Instagram, at True Access, TRUACCESS. And if it is on Facebook, it is True Pettigrew. And if it's on Twitter, it's at True Access.
That's great. I love that True Access. That's a whole thing right there. That's a whole vibe. But True, man, again, this could have went a whole nother hour, man. This was a great talk. I am appreciative. I am grateful. The more I get to know of you, and since I've learned about you and getting to really see who you are, you've inspired me already. I'm just proud to know that you, my brother, are where you are. You're doing what you're doing. You're inspiring people I'm sure you're not even aware of, because they just see you and you're being 100% authentic. And that is what matters. And that is beautiful. So I appreciate you, brother. I thank you. For everybody out there, you know where we at, crashbell.com. This is the kid, Omar Davis. You know how to reach me. If you don't, any platform at Omar_odd_Davis. But as soon as you hit that odd part, I'm going to pop up. I'm the only one that's listed that way. But with that said, we want to thank you all for joining us. We're going to have another show coming for you, and we're going to have some pretty live hitters here. Not only are we going to bring some therapists on as well to give you more information, but we're also going to bring some people in positions like True, because what it comes down to is, for one, we celebrate our Black people that are in positions and they've made a mark in the industry, like a for real mark. And we celebrate the people in mental health who are people of color, who are doing what we need to do to, just celebrate and support BIPOC. That's it. We're here. We love you. We thank you. Go get yourself some me time, crashbell.com. Be blessed, all.